we love hanging out with this guy because it's kind of like a pro bono session with our psychiatrist. What are you looking at me like that for?
You're making strange noises over there.
Oh, I was
scratching on the table.
wiping the donut crumbs off my table. He brings donuts. That's the other reason we love this guy. Dr. Steve Grcevich, Northeast. What am I saying? He's a psychiatrist. And we love having you here. Also president and founder of Key Ministry. Welcome back, brother.
Awesome. Nice to see you in person, Miss Lauren.
Yes, you too.
Oh, you guys haven't met in person before.
No,
Second
we
time.
met at Walkworthy last year.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, she's been telling me what to do at Walkworthy for years. Finally, we're colleagues, and
And this year I get a break at Walkworthy.
You think
I
you
just
can
do it 5
resist?
days a week.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think you'll tell me what to do at Walkworthy. Let's just be honest. But we're friends on Facebook, which means we're actual friends in real life. See, you've been traveling a lot and speaking.
Well, there have been some interesting doors opening for our ministry more recently. So I was at Children's Pastors Conference earlier this month in Orlando. We're going to be doing another Children's Conference D6 in early April. Going to be doing a major event for American Association of Christian Counselors, specifically focused on children's mental health in Atlanta in April. A couple of days at the Summit Church, working with their people who are involved with disability ministry and
That's
outreach.
J.D. Greer's church,
coming
by the
up.
way. Yeah.
And disability in the church are the big conference that you've helped MC in the past when it was here in Cleveland, outgrew Cleveland, so that we are going to be, it's 4 days long now, and we will be in Orlando for that at Calvary Orlando, May 1st through the 4th. And early bird registration's now open for folks who are interested in traveling to Orlando for a fun ministry conference with 99 speakers this year.
Oh, wow.
Well, and for those who may not be aware, I mean, all of this is tied to the work of Key Ministry. Can you give us the elevator speech of what Key Ministry is all about?
We work with churches to help them welcome families who have kids with disabilities. And so that we've had a unique focus on hidden disabilities, mental health issues, trauma, medical conditions where there aren't outwardly apparent physical symptoms.
So why do you think there's been this uptick in interest? Like what's happening where people are suddenly jumping on board here?
I think that there's a greater awareness of the fact that, with a lot of these disabilities, and as we've talked about in particular, with these mental health conditions and disabilities, it's a significant impediment to people being involved with church. And so that we know that folks are significantly underrepresented. We've talked before about the fact that families would have a kid with depression, anxiety, disruptive behavior, ADHD, they're far less likely to attend church. I actually think that with the increased awareness about mental health issues in the culture at large, in part driven in a lot of churches, we've lost a lot of people. And I think that places are getting more serious now and more focused around looking at positive ways that they can impact their community, plus, rebuilding the body because of all the people that we've lost. I just finished reading Great Dechurching. And you think about, we've lost 40 million people.
Wow.
And so I think that folks are realizing that there's a group that's in need, that we as a church need to start thinking about how, what our response is going to be to that need, and what can we offer a lot of people who are struggling right now.
And I will say I'm encouraged by the dramatic shift in attention to this issue, because it wasn't that long ago that, Christian people and churches would kind of scoff at mental health.
You would have never heard anything like the prayer Joe Abraham did this morning.
Yeah.
Where he was talking about trauma and praying specifically for folks who were going through mental health struggles. We didn't hear stuff like that 10 years ago. And I think that's really transformative, and it's doing a lot to remove the stigma that historically existed around a lot of these issues.
Well, because people would oversimplify it, right? And turn it into exclusively a spiritual problem.
That's right.
Or like a parenting problem.
Yeah, it's sin. Like if you trusted God more, you wouldn't be anxious. But I think we know that there are a lot of instances where God may use someone's anxiety to draw them into a closer relationship with him or to make them more dependent upon him.
And a great psychiatrist and Christian counselor would help people with real behavioral-based, evidence-based strategies and counseling, along with faith in Christ.
Absolutely.
Like it's both. It's not either or.
That's why it's so cool that I've got this thing coming up that everybody can be a part of for free next week at Denver Seminary, where as part of their gospel initiative, they're doing an entire day-long live and virtual conference specifically looking at the church's credible witness when it comes to youth mental health.
Yes, it's called Compelling and Credible Witness, the Church and Youth Mental Health. I love the idea of compelling witness. Help people understand why they would include credible witness.
Well, I think that part of, we live in an evidence-based world. And, folks, to be taken seriously, folks want things that work. And I think that as part of our witness as Christians is that, Jesus refers to himself as the way, the truth, and the life. And so that part of our credible witness is representing truth well. And one of my frustrations of my profession is that sometimes it seems like recently truth has been hijacked because of certain ideologic agendas. And so that if people are going to take us seriously, and if we're going to be consistent with Jesus' calling and the gospel imperative, we have to be able to talk about these issues knowledgeably, and we have to be able to tell people things that are, sound, scientifically validated and true.
And what we're going to do here in just a minute, we'll take a quick break and come back again with Dr. Steve Grcevich. He's a child and adolescent psychiatrist and president and founder of Key Ministry. He's going to be speaking at this conference, Compelling and Credible Witness, the Church and Youth Mental Health. They've given them 3 prompts if you're a speaker, and these are challenging in terms of how can you create a credible witness in this area. We're going to see what his answers will be as we all continue thinking about the importance of mental health for kids in our churches and adults as well. Dr. Steve Grcevich is our guest in studio. He's a child and adolescent psychiatrist and president and founder of Key Ministry. He's speaking at an upcoming conference at Denver Seminary. Is where
Denver
it is?
Seminary.
It's the Compelling and Credible Witness, the Church and Youth Mental Health. And if you're a conference speaker, they gave like 3 expectations of a speaker, and these are hard prompts. Usually it's like, come and speak to us. And you could spend 30 minutes saying essentially nothing. And they've given you 3 things you have to respond to, and I'm anxious to hear your response to these. First one, explain 2 concrete steps that churches could take within the next 6 months that would benefit the mental health of the youth in their church, family, or school.
I actually have 5 that are going to be part of my presentation.
Oh, you're going to brownie points.
Yeah,
So,
I've got extra.
So one would be for your church to develop an intentional, mental health outreach and inclusion strategy. And I think we're going to offer to start some sort of an online cohort or do things to coach churches along the lines with that. Second thing that they could do is to think about starting a biblically based mental health support group for teens, adults, or both. And there are a couple of great organizations. Fresh Hope is one, Mental Health Grace Alliance, that have really well validated biblically based models, and that they will go ahead and train folks in churches how to go ahead and do that.
Can that be lay leader run, or do you have to have a licensed counselor?
Oh, no, it's all lay leader run.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that 100% of the Fresh Hope groups, and I think 90% plus of the Grace Alliance groups are run by lay people, not professionals.
So then it would essentially just go right alongside, a grief support group. I mean, not the same thing, but churches do this, right? They have grief share and things like that. So you're saying a support group for mental health. Okay. Mm-hmm. What else?
Create events to educate people in your church and folks in the surrounding community about mental health issues in youth and what they can do. And a couple of places that are friends of this show that I've been out to Cuyahoga Valley Church, I've been out to Josh Stone's place over in Brunswick, and that when they've done these events, it's been very, very popular. Lots of parents show up, and it gives people an opportunity, the pastors, youth leaders, having a professional from the community, parents, talk through, how we can locally respond more effectively to some of these issues.
Do you think churches, or I'm sorry, local schools would be supportive of advertising these kind of events?
Well, one of the things that I would think that we would start seeing more of, and interestingly enough, Denver Seminary has a specific initiative reaching out to Christian schools. And the guy who leads that up is going to be one of the guys who are speaking at this conference, is that I'm kind of surprised that I haven't been invited, to do this at any of the Christian schools, because with the funding that's been opened up through the state for kids who need, extra resources from an educational standpoint, that there are more and more schools that are getting interested in including and serving kids who might have like learning issues and concomitant mental health type issues.
Okay, what else can folks do in the next 6 months? This is part of your presentation to help make a real change in mental health for youth.
So if I'm a pastor, if I'm on staff at a church, or particularly like if I'm like middle school ministry, high school ministry, one of the things that parents are desperate for when they have a kid who has struggles is, where can I go for help?
Yes.
And I think that putting together a list of practitioners, treatment facilities, in the community that serve different types of mental health needs, and to actually do a little bit of vetting and find out who would be able to provide these services in a way that's, culturally competent from a Christian standpoint, would be something that's incredibly helpful for families. We know from the Lifeway study 10 years ago that when they talked with families that were dealing with mental illness, one of the things that they most asked for from their churches, and where there was the biggest disconnect with what their churches said that they could deliver, is that they wanted help from the church in terms of referring them to professional people in the community who could help.
So this is not just, going online and making a list of the nearby counselors. You're saying really vetting and being able to look at somebody and say, I've talked to this counselor or this particular group, and this is a great place for you to go.
Yeah, interesting enough, Brad Hambrick, we mentioned the Summit Church. He's the counseling pastor there, has actually written some really nice stuff online for other pastors to talk about how you might go about and vet, like what kinds of interview questions they might want to ask folks if they were out talking to practitioners in the community.
It's going to take time to do it, but I think it's super important. You're right. People often want to trust their church as a source for, referral. Mm-hmm. I mean, for something as even trivial as like finding an accountant, why wouldn't we want to do that for mental health? Was that all 5?
Well, the fifth would be doing concrete things to reduce mental health stigma. And like Joe Abraham's prayer this morning would be great at that. It might be, again, like, doing, preaching on a mental health related topic. It could be, if you're leading a youth group, praying specifically for kids in the community who have mental health struggles, so that people within our churches and our Christian community know that they have permission and that it's okay to be able to talk about this stuff. It's very powerful in terms of destigmatizing.
From the pulpit is probably the most powerful.
From the pulpit is most powerful.
And I would say that as hard as it is, if a pastor himself is struggling in an area of mental health, being open about that, as hard as that can be, could make a huge difference.
It can make a huge difference. And if the pastor's not able to do that, we know statistically that 20% of our pastors have been struggling with this stuff over the last few years. It's not too hard to find a colleague in the community who's been struggling with it.
Or somebody on staff that has credibility in the congregation.
Somebody on staff, or a member of the congregation with credibility.
There you go. Good idea.
Who's experienced it.
Next prompt for the conference is you have to summarize what a credible Christian witness would look like on this topic of youth mental health.
So I come back to Micah 6:8, love justice, do mercy, walk humbly with your God. When I think of the extremely secular and somewhat hostile to Christianity people that I encountered, with some of the things that I was involved with, like on a national basis in child psychiatry, the thing that blows them away is when we act like the church should, and when we do things selflessly to care for the most vulnerable people in our community. I know that one of the things that I had somebody from Cleveland Clinic call because word had gotten out to them from families coming through the place that there were churches in our area that are offering free respite care, for families who have kids with disabilities or mental health issues. The fact that at Bay Press, my church, that 200 adults would come to volunteer so that 60 or 70 families would be able to get a break on a Friday night and be able to go out and do something while responsible people are caring for their children. That blows people's minds.
200 volunteers?
Yeah, we've had up to 200 volunteers when our church does respite night.
Wow.
The slots fill within an hour when Beth Golick, who's our disability engagement director, when she posts it online, the available respite slots fill within an hour.
And let it not go unnoticed, for clarity's sake, again, you're saying that made such an impact in the community. Somebody from the medical profession, from Cleveland Clinic,
called me to ask what churches were doing this in our area because it's such a desperately needed support.
Now that is credible gospel witness.
Bingo.
Providing something like that. And it's right in line with the historic church. I mean, we were providing schools, hospitals, things like that years ago.
And it flies directly in the face of some of the assumptions that people make about us who are outside the church and in a very insular culture, particularly when you start thinking about the quote unquote elites. Blows them away.
How did Bay Pres get 200 volunteers for that? That's a lot of volunteers.
Well, we've got some really good people at our church, and
it must be years of development.
It's been 25 years we've been doing this now, but having the pastor talk about the importance of it from the pulpit, having families had videotaped interviews with families and their response to having had something like this available to them. That I think that doing that type of thing is our most powerful witness. For example, we talked before that there are churches that have contacted us where they've been approached about taking in several hundred foster children. Yeah, I mean, these are obviously large churches, but increasingly, because of the breakdown in family structure and trauma, there are more and more of these kids flooding into the system, and that there are communities around the country where churches have committed, to stepping up to be able to care for them. For example, there's a Project 111 in Oklahoma where basically the churches of Oklahoma have, come together, developed an organization to provide a home for every foster child in the state who needs one. That's the kind of stuff that makes people take notice.
And it's a game changer for our witness, which I think is so important, especially in a society that's so hostile towards Christian people, and they call us hypocrites. It would be hard to call us names if we were making a name for Jesus by doing these types of things.
That's right. But again, it makes them rethink their false beliefs about us and their misperceptions about us.
And it's not that hard to do these kind of things, is it, Doc?
No, I mean that even in very small churches, that they might be able to do like relational respite, where people from a small group can go into somebody's home and provide that kind of support and care for them. We've seen places where there are several small churches, for example, that'll come together to do a night to shine, and that's the Tebow proms that are taking place next weekend in anticipation of Valentine's Day. And it's really cool when different churches come together to address some of these needs. I know that Bay Press is partnering with, I think, Strongsville United Methodist Church, to host, I think, 220 guests at our Night to Shine.
And now I can picture somebody going, yeah, all that sounds nice, but what about the gospel? So the final point you have to hit here. Share how Christian action on youth mental health might compel others to draw closer to Christ.
So I think that that we have an incredible opportunity here for outreach and evangelism. And one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot in anticipation of this, and if I had a chance to rewrite the mental health in the church book, I think that the most powerful thing that we can do, and what's ultimately going to be the best inclusion, is empowering people in the church to do ministry, because it's going to be families impacted by mental health issues and teens impacted by mental health issues who are going to be most effective in doing the outreach. That when you start thinking about, and one of the things that they discuss, like if you look at the website, is like, well, what are some of the positive predictors of mental health with kids? And they talk about, well, there's household structure, but positive relationships with peers and teachers, feelings of positive regard, participation in school and community activities, opportunities and skills for communication, recognition of contribution and achievements, a sense of security. We as a church are positioned to offer youth all of those things. And what could be more empowering? We were talking earlier about, like, how do you get kids away from their cell phones? Well, engage them in a greater mission. and so that if we're able to offer sort of real, in-person, authentic community in the physical presence of one another, and this is one of the things I've been thinking about, that one of the ministries we work with has adult hope coaches. Why can't we have teen hope coaches, who are trained to provide mental health support to their peers in middle school and in high school? That probably the best way of, if somebody has a mental health struggle, the best way of welcoming them into church is to have a trusted friend come alongside them to help them negotiate some of the things that they might experience that would otherwise be difficult for them. And so I think that we have an opportunity, when we think about the youth who are already part of the church, to consider how we empower them to be the agents of change, to be the church, to folks who need to experience the gospel, and what would be more inside out than Jesus, using folks, in the midst of their mental health struggles to be able to, to be a blessing to other people and to share the gospel with other people.
Our guest this morning has been Dr. Steve Grcevich, again, a child and adolescent psychiatrist and president and founder of Key Ministry. If you want more information, it's super easy to find out about Key Ministry. And so how do they find you?
www.keyministry.org. And if you go to the Denver Seminary website, you'll find a link for the free sign-up for the conference a week from Friday.
And you found that pretty easily, didn't you, Lauren?
Yeah, and if you need it, you can text us and I'll send you the link. There's a virtual registration too. We're not asking you to go to Denver.
Right, exactly. But you could if you wanted to.
You could.
Doc, thanks again so much for your time and expertise. I love that we can cover this together on the show.
Yeah, and thanks again for the platform for talking about this. It's important.
You bet.